Everybody, Chris with the Berisford Group here again. Today we are going to talk about, should I move to Colorado Springs? The short answer, no. It's too crowded. We don't have room for anybody else. It's perfect the way it is. No, really, we're going to talk through some environment factors. We're going to talk through some cost of living factors and just kind of what's going on in Colorado Springs so you guys can make the decision. It's a good place to be. So let's break this down, like I said, into a couple different areas. The first thing I want to talk about is the environment. What's the environment like in Colorado Springs? So we're talking physical environment. So number one, it is sunny. It's sunny almost all the time, it seems like. I think they say we get about 320 days of sunshine, which for a guy like me, who grew up in Ohio, and it's like the opposite of that, I think we got like 45 days of sunshine. It's amazing. I love the sunshine, man. And you do get your seasons. You get your spring, summer, fall, and winter. But it is sunny, man. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. All throughout the year, sunny. Can't say it enough. Another thing is that it is a dry environment. Some people do not like the dryness. So Colorado Springs, it's a high desert. It's kind of that arid type of environment. So if you need to have lush green stuff all year long, may not be the case for it. May not be the right place for you. If you like humidity, which I don't really know many people that like humidity, but if you like humidity, not going to be the place for you whatsoever. So very dry environment. And it gets green in the springtime and a good chunk of the summer, and then it kind of browns up a little bit, kind of late summers, it gets hotter through the fall, and then of course in the wintertime, of course we got a lot of pine trees, so you still get greenery, it does get it just kind of gets really dry. It's dry all year long, but then it gets kind of that brown arid feel to it kind of as you get later in the summertime. So if you don't like dryness, probably not going to like it here in Colorado Springs. What else about the environment? So if you like the outdoors, I don't really know that there's a better place to be. I mean, I'm sure there's other places that are about as good as what the Colorado Front Range is. You're right up against the Rocky Mountains. You know, your Pikes Peak is right out our back door. You look at it literally every day. You know, so you've got this huge 14,000 foot peak. You can go climb. Like skiing's close by. Whether it's winter sports or summertime sports, if you like the outdoors, there's really not much place better than Colorado Springs. Just close proximity to just everything you want to do. That was a huge draw for me. It's what brought me back to Colorado and why I wanted to stay here. So if you're an outdoors enthusiast, Colorado is pretty awesome. There's definitely, like I said, other places that are pretty cool too. But as far as just overall skiing, backpacking, hiking, climbing, trail running, whatever it is, you're going to love Colorado Springs for that, for sure. Let's see, what's a couple other things here? I want to talk about the wintertime a little bit though. So if you don't like any snow and you don't want cold weather, probably not the right place for you. Now that said, I mentioned the sunshine earlier. Even when it does get cold in the wintertime, it's sunny out, so it doesn't feel like that Midwest or that Northeast, where it just feels like gray and cold all the time. So you don't get that for sure, but it does get cold in the wintertime, and you do get some snow. There's no doubt about that. The snow usually melts off pretty fast. It's not like I said, like the far Northeast or Minnesota where, it snows and it stays there until the spring. It melts off, and then you get another snowstorm. So you do get some seasonal changes for sure, and I don't know, like as I've been here longer, I probably like the cold less and less. I just love it to be springtime, and then whenever it starts to get cold in the wintertime, I get grumpy about it. But overall, it's not that bad. It does get cold. You do get some snow here in Colorado Springs, but it's not terrible. A lot of it depends on exactly where you're at in Colorado Springs too. So I live up in the Black Forest, which is just north of Colorado Springs, and I think our house is at about 7,600 feet elevation. So, we get a little bit more snow than what folks in downtown Colorado Springs proper, which is it's about 1,000 feet lower than what we are here. So it depends on what part of town you're in. On the far south side of town, Fountain area, you might get a dusting of snow, and then on the far north side towards Monument, you might get a foot of snow. So it depends on the area too. But I always like to tell people, expect some snow, expect some cold. You would think so. It's Colorado, right? But it doesn't stick around. It usually warms up. You get those sunny days in the wintertime. So that part of it's not really that bad. Another thing is that Colorado Springs in El Paso County, the Pikes Peak area, and honestly the entire Colorado Front Range is just growing like crazy. There's just a ton of demand. It seems like everybody you talk to is talking about moving to the Colorado Front Range. And when we say Front Range, we're talking kind of northern Colorado, Fort Collins, down through Denver, down through Colorado Springs, through Pueblo, kind of all of those main cities, if you will, that are on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains, right up against the foothills. So that's the Front Range. So it seems like a lot of people just want to move here, so it's growing fast. Now, if you like a big city environment, maybe that's a pro for you. But if you're looking to truly kind of escape from, kind of the busyness, the hustle and bustle, it's certainly going to feel less busy than, a town like Chicago or New York. But it's not the slow, small town that Colorado Springs kind of used to be. It's definitely grown. I don't know what the population is right now. It's between 700 and 800,000, I'm probably thinking, for Colorado Springs. But it is rapidly growing. So there's a lot of growth all over. So what does that kind of lead to? It leads to extra congestion on the roadways. Housing prices are a little bit higher. I'm going to roll into that here in a second. So just the building, there's a lot of building going on right now because there is this big influx of people, which, like I said, if you're trying to kind of really just escape from everything and you kind of want that small town, slow pace way of life, may not be the best fit for you. There's certainly other cities within Colorado that fit that bill exactly, and somewhere maybe like a 30-minute drive from Colorado Springs. But Colorado Springs proper may not be the best fit if that's really what you're looking for, because it is just growing so fast. I mentioned the cost of housing. So if you're willing to pay more for a house than what you would in a lot of places in the country, then maybe Colorado Springs is for you. The average purchase price now is over $400,000 here in Colorado Springs, El Paso County area. So home prices are higher. The cost of living is, I would say overall, it's a little bit more than what it is in most places in the country, but really the housing cost is really the biggest thing. So rent rates are pretty high, and it is expensive to buy a home here. So if that's something that you're up for, hey, it might be a great fit. If you don't really like the idea of that, might be better places to look to get some of the other features of Colorado Springs, but without the high housing prices. Proximity to a big city. So this, I think, is a really great thing about Colorado Springs. We're about 60 miles from Denver. There's a huge project on the interstate right now, construction, so it makes it not a fun drive. But when that's all done, it's a pretty fast drive from Colorado Springs to Denver. Downtown Denver, when the project's done, it'll probably take about 45, 50 minutes probably from North Colorado Springs. So you're really close to Denver, downtown Denver. So you've got all of your major sports teams, the Denver Broncos football team, the Nuggets basketball team, Avalanche hockey team, and the Rockies for baseball. So you have all of your major sporting events you want to go to are just a quick hour up the road. I really like that aspect of it. If you want to do more shopping and things like that, I guess more cultural type things like go to shows and performances, Denver has a lot of that, as much as most other big cities across the country. You just got to drive an hour to get to it, but it's not nearly as busy in Colorado Springs as Denver, and you do save more on the cost of living by being in Colorado Springs versus Denver. So proximity to a big city, if that's an important thing for you, then Colorado Springs is in a great position because you are just, like you said, like an hour down the road from Denver. Not that bad at all. Let's see what else we have here. So suburb living, this is another big thing. I know a lot of folks, it seems like this is pre-COVID, there was a big trend for people moving into downtown city centers. There was a big kind of just migration that direction, if you will. It's been happening for a couple years. So Colorado Springs, while there is a downtown area of Colorado Springs that's had a ton of revitalization, it's actually very, very nice now. There's a lot of nice restaurants down there. They actually just finished up building a new stadium for the soccer team that's local here. So the downtown Colorado Springs area is very nice now. But that said, it's not a huge sprawling downtown area. So there's not a lot of housing opportunities downtown Colorado Springs. There's a few loft options right in the heart of downtown. And then like a lot of cities, kind of like the older homes that have been revitalized, kind of the trendy homes, built turn of the century, if you will. There's a lot of those downtown, but the prices are really high too. So because there's been such a big push for folks to live downtown, those prices have really went up. But again, there's just not a lot of volume of homes right close to downtown that are walking distance to kind of that what you classic downtown area you think of, like shops and restaurants and things. So most of Colorado Springs, I don't like to use the term urban sprawl, but that's kind of what happened a little bit in Colorado Springs. I would say probably like the 90s through the 2010s, maybe something like that. But there's a lot of suburbs. So there's a lot of suburbs that are lacking character in a lot of cases, where it just kind of seems like a sea of houses. And then there's a lot of chain restaurants and chain stores, if you will, around those suburbs. And it's suburbs, I don't even know if that's the right term, because it's all part of Colorado Springs. It's not like it's a suburb of the Springs, but it all has just kind of grown together. But it's that style where you have single family homes, detached single family homes on modest sized lots, and just a lot of those, like street after street after street after street of these houses. So it depends on what type of, I guess, kind of living environment you're looking for. If you want that super hot, trendy downtown nightlife kind of town, Colorado Springs doesn't really have a lot of that. There's some, but again, like I said, you're close by to Denver. You just can't walk to Denver to go do it, I guess. But the Springs, it's a lot of kind of just those rolling communities where it's just they kept building houses after houses on street after street. So that's what you get a lot in Colorado Springs. I will say it seems like the city and the county have done a little bit better job over the last few years to kind of mitigate that a little bit and make sure the developers are putting in like commercial space and park space and mandatory sizes of open space and green space for the amount of houses they put up. So it's definitely gotten better, but again, you have to kind of, I think, have in your mind for a vast majority of people that are going to buy in Colorado Springs, or if they're going to rent in Colorado Springs, their housing situation is going to be more kind of neighborhoodish like that versus kind of the downtown loft style living. Like I said, there's a little bit of it, but just not a lot of it. We talked earlier a little bit about the altitude. I want to go back to that real quick. So, we have some folks that the altitude just really, really bothers them. They come to Colorado, they land. I actually had a client that she was going to buy a house in Colorado Springs. She landed at DIA, Denver Airport, and as soon as she got off the plane, she started to feel bad. And that same day that she got here, she said, "Chris, I'm not moving to Colorado. I can't deal with it." Now, what I will say is that after you're here for a little bit, unless you have kind of some severe health issues or some respiratory issues, after you're here for a little bit, I think most people adjust really well to the altitude, but it can be a little bit of a shock to the system, especially if you're coming from sea level on one of the coasts maybe. It is a big difference living at, like I said, we're at 6,000 to 7,000 feet. So it is a big difference for your system. And like I said, it wears on people a little bit sometimes, especially folks that are a little bit older. But after you've been here for a while, most people do settle into. But just something to think about. And maybe if you've had a bad experience at altitude before, maybe it's not the best fit for you. Let's see here. What else? Ooh, let's talk about this. So, like I said, cost of living is a little bit higher, right? So the number one thing that I recommend people figure out before they get here is, can you get a job here? So Colorado Springs, like I said, it's grown really fast. So that's kind of driven more businesses to open up headquarters here. There's a huge new Amazon facility that's going in right now. They just leased another existing building for another distribution center. So Amazon is getting a large footprint here in Colorado Springs. There's a ton of governmental agencies and defense contracting jobs here in Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is home to 5 military installations. So with those military installations, not only do you have the men and women in uniform, but you also have all the civilian contractor support that goes with it. So there's a lot of opportunity for those types of jobs here in Colorado Springs as well. It seems like we're getting a little bit more from the tech sector starting to come to Colorado Springs. There was a big push for tech companies to move their headquarters to Denver. And I think that a lot of folks have started to kind of make the commute from Colorado Springs up to Denver for those jobs, just because, again, cost of living is less here than what it is in Denver, but there's just a lot of job opportunity in the tech sector in Denver. So I always recommend people make sure that you can get a job before you move out somewhere. So I think that's just good sound advice no matter where you end up going. But because Colorado Springs doesn't have a huge broad range of every possible job segment, you just want to make sure you check that out before you head out this way. So that's a handful of things, a little bit of ramblingness, but I love Colorado Springs. I love the Pikes Peak area. It's not right for everybody for sure. If you don't like the outdoors, if you want it to be green and humid all the time, and you want to be in a small town that's not growing, don't come to Colorado Springs. It's not the right place for you whatsoever. But if you want to be in a place that is rapidly growing with a lot of great opportunities, just an amazing amount of natural beauty, and every outdoor thing that you could ever hope to do is right out your back door, no more than an hour and a half away to go to a ski area in the wintertime, you really should take a look at Colorado Springs. I think it's out of all the front range cities right now, it's the one that gives you still a good, if you can say it, a good value for your dollar on the housing side, believe it or not. Like I said, Denver, Fort Collins is a lot more expensive than what Colorado Springs is. So you get more bang for your buck from the housing side, which is it's just a huge deciding point for a lot of us. And like I said, there is a lot of job growth here, so that's a great thing. And like I said, I can't say enough about the outdoor beauty of Colorado Springs. It's an amazing place. And if you answered yes to most of those things that I said, then Colorado Springs just might be the place for you. So if you have any questions about the town whatsoever, I've been here for a quick minute, so if you need anything at all, if you have any random questions, reach out, comment below, whatever it is. Make sure, if you would, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. We just want to give you guys all the information you could possibly need if you're thinking about a move here to Colorado Springs, keep you up to date on what's going on in the Springs and the real estate market and every other aspect of it. So thank you so much. We'll talk to everybody soon.